this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind.
Hello, hey everyone, Joey Sparks here. This is your reminder that God's mercies are new once again this morning. Paul addresses principles of living, putting on, putting off. Let this change be what happens within you. That's especially emphasized in Colossians chapter 3, beginning of verse 5, and all the way through verse 17. We talked yesterday about how he describes those in spatial terms, on and in, especially. Now, what he then begins to do is to say, beginning of verse 18, here's how some of those changes will look relationally. And so that's a different angle to this spatial concept, of course, because we live in relationship with each other. That's a human side of a spatial discussion. So here's largely verses 5 through 17. Here's the difference Christ makes in you. Here's the difference God has made in you. And now, verse 18. Here's what it'll look like when you make those differences in these various roles and relationships you have. And he addresses some of the most important and the most common relationships we enjoy. So he addresses marriages, wives and husbands. He addresses children and parents. He addresses bondservants that we would think most closely about today as being employees or workers. And then he addresses masters or employers, those who do have people working under them or for them. And the takeaway should be this, that Christ, the difference Christ makes in us, affects every relationship we have. And we can understand that when that difference makes a difference in our most important relationships, family relationships, daily relationships, working relationships, it will necessarily affect every relationship. So it'll also affect our church family relationships. It'll also affect our school relationships. It'll affect our community relationships. It'll affect our random kind of stranger relationships. It affects how we treat everyone. It begins at home. It continues at work. The difference Christ has made. And so that means that when I have relationship struggles, the first place I must start is Christ and ensuring that my life is right with Christ. Not assuming it, but ensuring it. Number two, implication of that is stop blaming the other party in the relationship and stop waiting on them to change. This is one of the most challenging things I personally wrestle with just myself. And the struggles that I hear from people from time to time about marriages or children, work, whatever it is, it's evident in their lives too. That when we have a marriage struggle or a parent to child struggle, will I have the courage to go back and look at my own life with Christ first? And then will I stop blaming them? Stop waiting for them to make the change. That's not what Paul says to do. Paul says you treat the other person in a manner consistent with how Christ has treated you, and you do so using the principles of how Christ has redeemed you and forgiven you. So Christ impacts every relationship. So let it impact and change every relationship. Thank you for your time this morning. It's our prayer that the timeless Word of God will be your meditation all day long today.
I woke up this morning with my mind